said, I'm excited about just having a missionary every month to just kind of focus in on, hopefully. If you do get their cards, I encourage you to try to learn the names. I've tried to learn the names of many of the kids of the missionaries, and it is hard. You know, you get to the Burgets and they got 12 of them, and and then you got guys like Brother Nicholas who named their kids like Jerusha and Abishai and Jeshurun. I don't know, is that right? Jeshurun. Like and Demarius, you get those kind of names. Those aren't exactly Bob and Bill and Joe. It's hard to stick some of those to stick with you. Yeah. Whatever happened to names like the good names like Stephen? I'm sorry. Just kidding. But I do encourage you to maybe even take some time to learn a little bit about them. Maybe learn a little bit about their field. I know maybe you think you know a little bit about China, or Korea, or Japan, or Mexico, or Germany, but it's always good to just kind of look into what they're doing. Maybe just look at how the gospel is received if it's a country that's open to it, those kind of things. Anyways, I will now preach the word of God. Hopefully. I may preach heresy. You don't really know. All right, Luke chapter 18 this morning. Luke chapter 18. I think part of the problem is I got a lot of sleep last night. I think we had our kids in bed asleep by 7:30. I think I was asleep by 8:30. And that's not normal for me. I like to get up early on a Sunday, but I had no problem getting up today. I was wide awake. So I think part of the problem is I'm full on sleep. So apologize to you guys for what happens next. I'm one of those alphabetical things too, which is sometimes a blessing. All right, Luke chapter 18. Last week we started chapter 18, and I said it's almost like a two-part message. It's not, but it almost is. It's two back-to-back parables. Last week it was a parable on prayer. It was something that I think we all can agree we're not where we need to be. And I don't know if I'll ever get there. I remember reading a book where one pastor was talking about, and it was when he was older, he was saying, everybody wants my pulpit, everybody wants my ministry, but nobody wants my prayer closet. And that struck me. I thought, that's true. Everybody wants at least for preachers, it's not everyone, but the temptation for preachers to say, I want bigger, better, large, massive churches, but nobody's willing to just be on their knees before the Lord an hour every day. And by the way, there are some that do that, but that's few and far between. And anybody who's tried to pray even for 20, 30 minutes at a time has realized it's hard. And at 29, I'm thinking, my body hurts already. You're 5 minutes in, you're going, man, this hurts. My knees hurt, my back hurts. But we talked about prayer last week, and I'm guessing this is to the same exact crowd. Now, the focus of the parables was for different people. And so the focus of this one isn't necessarily to the disciples, but it is still something we all, I believe, struggle with and need some help with. So let's go ahead and read verses 9 through 14. If you would please stand in honor of God's word. Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14. Once again, as in verse 1, he really gives us the whole point of the parable before he even gives us the parable. Verse 9. And he spake this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous, and despised others. Here's the parable. 2 men went up into the temple to pray, and the one a Pharisee, and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. The nerve of that prayer, right? I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man, referring to the publican, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For every one that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I ask that you'd help us in this message. Lord, help us with the truth of it. Lord, it's something I believe we all struggle with, and hopefully we can bring that to light today through application, but convict our hearts and work through me, Lord, really just empty me of self and with the Holy Spirit, that you would shine forth through this message. I need your help this morning. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. You may be seated. Thank you for standing. As with prayer, this week's parable on pride is probably something, if we're honest, we all struggle with a little bit. At least a little bit. Me, a lot of bit, but you maybe a little bit. We all think we're something special. Let's be honest. We all kind of think we're something special. There's a story told of a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and him and his wife were heading out on vacation. So this man is a CEO. I mean, he wears, thousands and thousands of dollar suits, and he drives this really nice car. And on the way out of town, they stop at a gas station, and he goes in after gassing up to pay for the gas, grab a snack or something. And as he comes out, he sees his wife talking to the gas attendant. Someone who works at the gas station. And as he gets close, he realizes it's her ex-boyfriend, the guy before him. Well, I mean, he's a CEO of 500, CEO of a Fortune 500 company. He's driving a super nice car. He's wearing his super nice suit. So he doesn't even say anything to this guy because he's like, look at him. He's a gas station attendant. He gets in his vehicle and starts it up, starts driving down the road, and he looked over. Well, aren't you glad you married me instead of him? That's what you're thinking, isn't it? His wife said, no, I was just thinking, had I married him, you'd have been a Fortune 500 CEO and you would have been a gas station attendant. That's a funny form of pride, but there is a type of pride that has eternal implications, and it's found here, a type of pride that has eternal implications. Look back at verse number 9. We're going to be here for a minute in verse 9, just the audience of this parable. We figure out who he's talking to. And I know this is redundant to you, but I never know who maybe doesn't know or who will listen to this on the World Wide Web one day. But just for clarity's sake, a parable is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. It is Jesus' way of telling us something about heaven where we've never been. Some pastors are brave enough to go, has anybody ever been to heaven? And I'm like, I'm too scared to say that because somebody's going to raise their hand, and then what do you do then? So anyways, it's Jesus teaching us something about heaven in earthly terms that we can understand to make it easier for us to understand. So he begins to teach this parable, and as I said, this is not to the disciples. Now, I believe the disciples are present. Let's not just take them out of the equation. We're going to tie them back into this. But we really don't know who this audience is, aside from the fact of what he says. He says, and he spake this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. Now, who are the certain? Who are the certain? We don't know. This could be Pharisees. Could be. This could be just a carpenter or a message bearer or a soldier or a baker. Really, what they did in their lives doesn't really matter. It's what they were trusting in that was the problem. They all trusted in themselves. There's a whole lot of application when you start talking about trusting in yourselves, but let's start with the big one. I would say the majority of America, the majority of people in our country are trusting in themselves to get themselves to heaven. I've lived in 3 different states, and I'll just use those 3 different states, and it is amazing to me, in 3 different states, which are all vastly different. Oklahoma, well, it's Oklahoma. Yeah, it's Oklahoma. New Mexico it's North Mexico. You know what I mean? Or at least where I lived. And then Colorado, very different places, but I've been soul winning in all three states. I've talked to people about Jesus in all 3 states. I've talked to people about heaven in all 3 states. And it usually goes something like this. I'm actually going to give you one of my lead-ins to talking about Jesus. Is I usually, if they'll give me the time of day, I'll ask them something like, so if you were standing outside the gates of heaven, and God was standing on the other side of the gate, and God told you, why should I let you in here? What would be your answer? What would be your answer? And I've heard a lot of stuff over the years, but it's all similar. It's something like, oh, well, I'm a good person. I'm a good person. Or I go to church. Or I give to church. Or I serve in my church. And I don't know why, but you'd be amazed. There's got to be there had to have been a surplus of Presbyterian ministers years ago, because I can't tell you the amount of times I've heard, my grandpa was a Presbyterian minister. I don't know why. It's always the Presbyterian one, but that's one of the answers I get, or would normally get a lot. But no one will get to heaven because of their own goodness. Yet Jesus is speaking to people who are trusting in themselves for their own righteousness. When I use my imagination, I kind of picture Jesus soul winning similarly. Not that I think he'd be much better than I am. In fact, I know he was. I've read the Bible. But I can picture him maybe asking a Pharisee that. So what are you planning on getting into heaven? How are you going to get into heaven? If God was to stand there and say, why should I let you into heaven? What would be your answer? And I can almost see them like offended. You know, like, what? You're asking me if I'm going to heaven? Do you not realize I've memorized the majority of the Pentateuch? Hey, Leviticus is in there, okay? That's a Bucky Beaver badge if you read it all the way through without falling asleep. These guys memorized it, okay? And I imagine the Pharisees dressed very, very proper and nice. I mean, they were well looked upon. I mean, it would be like a guy wearing a very fancy suit. I mean, look at the way I'm dressed. Look at I follow all the laws that God has given us. I've done this, and I tithe, and I give, and I fast, and what do you mean, am I going to heaven? Or what would I say to God if I was asked how to get into heaven? Are you crazy? And we laugh at that. Some of us, I hear you laughing. But there's people that think they're going to heaven because they're Baptist. That's right, yeah. Or Nazarene, or Catholic, or Presbyterian, or whatever. You can fill in. There's a lot to fill in with it. There's a lot of people that may say, well, I know I can't completely rely on myself to get myself to heaven, so they'll say something like, well, I'm a good person, and I was baptized X many years ago, or I was baptized when I was blank years old. I may not be able to get there all on my own, but I have been a good person and I've been baptized. Even some, it's less common, but some will say, oh, because I believe in Jesus and I was baptized. Or I believe in Jesus and I've gone to church. And let me encourage you, it's an either or proposition. You either believe in Jesus for your eternal security or you don't. Or you're believing in baptism, or you're believing in your works, or you're believing in your giving, or you're believing in your church membership. By the way, your church membership here, I'm sorry, it doesn't really do anything for you except to allow you to vote in our business meetings. Other than that, it's literally nothing. I know, some of you are real proud. I've been a member of this church. Yeah, I know, that's great and all, but it's not doing you much good. Just letting you know. I just want to be clear on that. I encourage everyone to be a member of the church, because Jesus Christ said to be baptized, and the Great Commission is baptize and add them to the church, and train them to. So it's a good thing to do, but I'm just letting you know, if that's something that you're, oh man, I'm something special. No, you're not. And sorry to burst your bubble on a Sunday morning. But let's be honest. Many in this room are saved. And so already you're thinking to yourself, this message ain't got nothing to do with me. I don't rely on my own righteousness to get me to heaven. I know it's only through Jesus Christ and His death on the cross and His resurrection from the cross and His paying for my sins penalties. I believe in Jesus. I can take it to the place. Some people are like me, where they have the time, the date, the place. Some people can just remember the day and vividly remember the event. And then I could do all that. I can tell you all that, Pastor, so I guess I can tune out. Well, there was other people in the crowd that I believe would have been saved at this time. You had the disciples who He was just talking to. When He's talking about prayer, I don't think He's necessarily nailing the people who aren't saved yet. I think that was something that He was talking to the people that are saved. So let's be fair. There's probably a lot of people there that knew Jesus as their personal Savior. Well, if they knew Jesus as their personal Savior, they weren't relying on that for their righteousness. Well, we rely on ourselves. We trust in ourselves for other things besides just getting into heaven. Well, like what? Thank you for asking. Like sin. People say things like this. I would never do that. You've probably said, I've probably said that. I may not have an exact reference, but you say, and you can fill in whatever that is, but I would never cheat on my spouse. I would never get a divorce. I would never be a homosexual. I would never drink and drive. I would never hurt a child. I would never get into that. I would never. Did you hear what you're saying there? I, meaning I believe me. I know I. By the way, the Bible says, wherefore let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. There are a lot of pastors that thought they would never fill in the blank. By the way, I'm not just preaching at you. I realize the severity of relying on myself is dangerous as well. And I'll fill you in 2017 or 18, I can't remember quite the year, but the pastor of the largest independent Baptist church in the nation lost his position and everything. He fell. Well, let's just say it like that. He fell. And I'll let you know what happened. He left his phone on the pulpit. In a big church, of course, so he leaves his phone on the pulpit, goes to his office. One of the deacons finds his phone. By happenstance is not a real word, but by God's providence, as this deacon is carrying his pastor's phone to his pastor's office to give it to his pastor, the phone rings and it's an illicit text from the other woman. I guarantee there was a point, I'll guarantee you, there's a point in that pastor's life where he said something like this, I'll never cheat on my wife. And then once he started doing that, he said, I'll never get caught. I would never. But he did. But he did. Trusting in yourself has another effect beyond just your failure. By the way, if you're trusting yourself, not just for getting yourself to heaven, you'll fail, but just success in anything that you're planning on doing, you're going to fail. But it has another effect that's mentioned here in verse 9, the very end of verse 9. It says, and despised others. If you're trusting in yourself, it will inevitably cause you to think you are better than others, and therefore, you're not going to like them. Nope. If you have a problem with people, if you don't like people, I can almost boil it. I can guarantee, if you'll give me enough time, we can cut away at all the fluff that you may say, I have a problem with them because of this, because of that, because of this, because they said this, because they did this. We can boil it all down, and it's probably your pride. And you think, somehow, some way, you're better than them. I'm going to try to illustrate this. Brother Mike, can you help me? Can you help me? Come stand up here, Brother Mike. Parker, can you help me? Here. I'll get some extremes here. All right. Try to illustrate this a little bit. All right. You stand there for a minute. All right, I'm going to compare myself to Brother Mike for a minute. I have a great head of hair. By the way, no, don't laugh too hard, because this is what we do. We always compare ourselves to others in areas that we think that we're better. Now, Brother Mike, he's a lot older than me. He's 50 years older than me. Exactly 50 years. So the fact that he doesn't have as much hair, I bet I'll be bald before he went bald. Let me just be clear on that. I'm not picking on that he's bald, but I'm saying I'll pick on Mike because, well, look, I got a great head of hair. Thank you for Mike. Now you come to Parker. He's 8 years old. 8 and a half if you ask him. Don't forget the half, that's important. He's got a nice full head of hair. I mean, he ain't got the balding. You see what if I look down, I hate editing the videos for the sermons because the sun will reflect at certain days and I'm like, I look all bald. So I'm not going to compare myself to him because I can't stand next to him and say I have a great head of hair. Because his hair is, he's got hair. It's there. I'm realizing the barber's having to leave a lot more on the top to comb. It's freaking me out. So we get this idea. We like to compare ourselves to people, but we like to compare in areas that we feel like we have the upper hand. Oh yeah, my marriage is great compared to their marriage. They're always fine. Oh, my kids are so much better than their kids. Oh, my job is so much better than their job. Oh, and we get this idea that we are something special. And it leads us to say, I'm better than them, and because I'm better than them, I don't like them. He's talking to men that most likely thought that they were holy. They thought that they were right. And if they are right, everyone else must be wrong. Do you realize if you think your standards are the greatest standards or the only standards, then everyone that doesn't live up to your standards isn't going to be as good as you? That's the way standards work. If you have a standard, if there's a standard for a weld, if you MIG weld and you lay just dimes, you don't know what any of that means, it's okay. But if that's the standard to you, then somebody that just gets the job done, they're not as good as welder as you are. If you think your standards are the best, then everyone else that doesn't meet those standards are wrong. And can you see how that was maybe the mentality of the Pharisees? Because they lived their life in such a way that they would uphold every law that they thought they could. They would dress in a certain way. They would act in a certain way. They would only represent themselves in a certain light. And you say, why are you bringing up Pharisee? Mainly because Jesus brought him up in his parable. So I'm guessing there might have been one or two in the audience. That's just my best guess. Now, not to say that that's the only people. I'm sure there were carpenters out there that were relying on themselves for their own righteousness. I'm sure there were message bearers that were relying on themselves for their own righteousness. I'm sure there were some soldiers that thought, man, I'm all that because I'm a soldier. One of the telltale signs of someone who is self-righteous is no one measures up to them. No one measures up to me. No one's as awesome as I am. In one area, like you can use the way you dress, no one's as spiritual, no one's as kind, no one's as moral, no one's as benevolent. And when you trust in your goodness, it causes you to despise others who don't meet your level of goodness. We think things like, well, if they were spiritual. I know we were joking physically about hair and things like that, but don't forget, this is church, and we do this stuff spiritually. Oh, if they were as spiritual as I would, they would be here on Wednesday nights. If they were as spiritual as I am, they would be here on Sunday school. If they were as spiritual as I am, they would dress this way, or they would say this, and we say that while we're 100 pounds overweight. I know, gut punched you there, maybe, possibly a little bit. I try not to look at anybody when I say it. When you evaluate your goodness, you automatically demean everyone else. So this is the audience that Jesus is talking to. This is the audience. So now let's get into the parable. Because some of y'all are going, whoa, you weren't kidding. We were there for a long time. I know that clock back there doesn't work, but do you realize how long you just preached? Okay. Let's get to the parable. The parable will actually go pretty quick, so don't sweat too much. We'll be done. So two men went up into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee and the other a publican. So we've got two very different men. We've got a Pharisee. He would have been respected. No, I know. We today, 2022, when I typically speak of Pharisees, I don't speak of them in good light. Now, by the way, there's a lot that they did that was good. Jesus said that they did a lot of things right. Jesus said, do what they say. Just don't do what they do. So I know I present them in a negative light, but the reality was, in their day, they were it. They were not only the spiritual leaders, but they were the rulers of their states, of their areas. Rome had let them kind of govern themselves. So they were kind of top dog. They were respected. Everybody liked them. So this man would have been called on to pray at church. You know what I'm saying? This guy was something special. He was a Pharisee, very respected. And then the other was a publican. Now, we say publican in a negative light too. We're like, oh, publican, but that really just means he was a tax collector. But here's the problem. One bad apple can spoil a bunch. That whole, it's kind of like one police officer can make people protest all police officers. One publican that would cheat and steal and lie and was a thief kind of just gave all the publicans a negative name. So even though this man may have actually been a just publican, where if Rome said, hey, the tax rate is 15%, he may have only charged 15%. He might have been just, but just because of his job, he was viewed as somebody that was a thief and a cheat and wicked. He may not have been, though. By the way, this is a great time to say, it really doesn't matter too much. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't care what others perceive you as, but I'm saying you really shouldn't matter too much what other people think as much as what God says or what God knows about you. What I mean by that is you can have everybody here fooled, you can have me fooled, you can have all the other church members fooled. Everybody may think you're really, really spiritual, or you're really, really good, or you're really, really great. That really doesn't matter, because what we think of you doesn't matter. It's what God knows about you. On the flip side of that, don't be overly concerned that we all know that you're super spiritual if you really are. It's funny, the ones that are really super spiritual are the ones that you usually maybe are the least expected, that you'd go, wow, I would have never guessed they pray for an hour a day. And they pray for every one of our missionaries by name, and they know all our missionaries' names. And man, I would have never guessed that they, so just to say that, it doesn't really matter what other men think. So the Pharisee stands there in the temple, in a place of worship, and so just, we don't have the temple, and there's a little bit that doesn't quite relate, but it's a place of worship, so just imagine him standing like in the middle of church. That's probably the best way for us, at least. So imagine him standing in the middle of church, and he prays this prayer. Let me read it again, because it's a humdinger. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself: God, I thank thee that I am not as other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. By the way, I think that implies that his eyes were open as he was praying. Did anybody else catch that? Unless he's just pointing in some random direction and maybe nobody's there or not. But as far as my imagination goes, if he's pointing out a publican, it's probably because he's looking around and he sees the publican. God, so his eyes, imagine this scene. This man, head held high. God, I'd like to thank you. You've been so good to me, God. Yep, I'm nothing like all these other men. Him, the extortioner, the adulterer, the publican. Thanks a lot that I'm not like any of these guys. And he goes on to explain why he believes he's so great. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I possess. By the way, the Pharisees were extreme about that. Like if they had a penny, I know they didn't have pennies, but if they did, they would cut a tenth off that penny and tithe off it. If they picked one up on the ground, they would cut the penny to put it in, because they were very serious. They're going to give a tenth of everything. Wow, what a prayer. Real quick, when you start to think that you're any different than any other man, you're kidding yourself. No, if I get up here and I start to think, man, I'm so glad I'm not like the guys out here, I'm kidding myself. Because I'm exactly like the guys out here. I'm not like the women, though, but I'm like the men out there. I specifically said guys. No, I am prone to pride. I am prone to lust. I am prone to sin. I am prone to all the same things all the men in this room are prone to. Just be clear. You are no different. You are no different. You are no different than anyone else in this room. No, I know. We get this idea. I'm something special, but we're not. You're kidding yourself. But he thanks God that he's not like these other men, and especially this publican. How arrogant, how wicked, and even the nerve to thank God for that. Like God made him something special, and he didn't make that publican something special. We all know that this Pharisee doesn't trust God. We know that because Jesus said that he's talking to people which trust in themselves for righteousness, and this is the picture of the people that trust in themselves. So we know he doesn't actually trust in God, he trusts in himself. One thing that drives me nuts is when people give God credit or try to co-sign God on something that they never really talked with God about. He's giving God credit that he's nothing like these other men, when God's standing there going, no, you're exactly like those other men. And you say, well, what do you mean? We do it all the time. Oh, I really believe the Lord wants me to go to this church. Oh, the church that doesn't use the right Bible, that they drink, they basically just watch videos the whole time. There's a rock band. You believe God wants you to go to that church. That's what you think God's telling. Okay, yeah. And they say, yep, I prayed about it. I think God really told me to do that. Oh, yeah, no, God's the one that blessed me with this job. I'm telling you, I know I sought it out. I applied for it, but it was God that gave me this job. Oh, the job that means you got to work on the weekends now, that you get less time with your family, less time at church, less time to serve, and it's going to be very easy for you to be completely uninvolved in church. Yeah, God did that. I'm sure of it. Oh, yeah, God's moving our family here. Oh, the place that there's no church anywhere close to you, there's no place for you to come together and corporately worship God, or if there is a church, it's nowhere close to the kind of church that you know you ought to be in. God's the one that led you there? Okay. Say, does that happen? I wish I could tell you it never happened, but it does. This Pharisee thinks the things that make him different are that he fasts twice a week and he tithes. Fasting is a good thing. When we preached through the book of Joel, it seemed like every week we were talking about fasting. It's kind of annoying to me. I'm tired of talking about fasting, because I don't want to fast. You know, I figured out my problem. I'm not allergic to any food. I might be the only millennial that's not allergic to any kind of food. That's my problem. I like it all. No, except for vegetables, which is also a problem. So I'm allergic to greens. Unless it's mint ice cream. That's a good green. We talked about fasting a lot. And I know, by the way, today, fasting is actually a term used a lot because it's like a fitness hack. Yeah. You know, you intermittent fast and you do the warrior fasting. I'm not talking about that kind of fast. I'm talking about the fasting where you're saying, I'm going to go without food so I can focus on prayer. That kind of fasting is great. So I'm not saying that this Pharisee was wrong in the fact that he fasted, but I will say this. Jesus did say when you do fast, you shouldn't let everybody know that you are. I mean, they would sell it. Oh, man, they'd sink their face in. And they'd come and, that cheeseburger looks awfully good. Brother Frank, would you like some? Oh, I can't have a cheeseburger. I can't tell you why, but it's a spiritual thing. Can't have a cheeseburger today. And they'd really laid on so that you knew they were fasting, but they followed the letter of the law and didn't say they actually were fasting, but they kind of blew the spirit of the law there. Then he says that he tithed. Again, that's a good thing. Jesus said of the Pharisees, when they were tithing, that they ought to have done, but they shouldn't have left the rest undone. Tithing is a good thing. It's an Old Testament principle from before there was ever Moses, and it's a New Testament principle because Jesus reiterated it. It's a good thing. I get excited when I see it in a passage. I'm like, it's there! I don't have to bring... Just kidding. I don't get that excited because I don't know. That's why I get excited, by the way. I don't know. I don't know who does, don't know who doesn't, don't really care. And anyway, so tithing, it's also a good thing. These two actions were what he claimed made him different. You say, well, nobody knows. I'm not going to say. Yeah, but what do you think makes you spiritual? Oh, well, being a member here. My giving, my serving, my suit. The only thing that makes us different from the lost is Christ. The publican, on the other hand, so this Pharisee gets up, he prays, he shows, this is why I'm so great. By the way, that's actually a really short list, isn't it? I would hope that you'd have a longer list of what makes you so righteous than two things. My daughter can come up with more than two things. She's 4. I'm pretty confident. She can be up here. I come to church every service, and I sing specials, and I give every service. She's got more than the Pharisee does at this point, and she's 4. By the way, it doesn't make her any spiritual either. Mainly because I force her to come to church. I'm the one that gives her the money to give. And I don't have to force her to sing the specials, but you got to force her to practice. But the publican, on the other hand, very different approach to prayer. He stands afar off. So I imagine this Pharisee, when he comes into the temple, man, he gets right in the middle of it, right? I mean, is everybody looking yet? Everybody looking? Oh, hey! I'm about to pray. Can you quiet? Oh, Heavenly Father, I thank thee that I'm not like these men. But that's not this publican prayer. He kind of stood afar off. I picture him maybe trying to be somewhere where no foot traffic would go by, somewhere where nobody would pass by. And the Bible just says that he can't even manage to muster the thought of lifting his own head up and his eyes up to God. He just... By the way, the Bible never tells us exactly how to pray. It doesn't say you got to get down on your knees, you got to bow your head at a 45-degree angle, close your eyes. But we see people praying in 3 different positions. Laying flat on their face, on their knees, or with their head bowed, standing. So there's some good principles there for prayer. And the eyes shut thing, there's no like real big spiritual thing about it, but it is helping you be less distracted. And it helps you to not think about it. If I'm praying and my eyes are open, I'm distracted to everything going on out there. I would be dead. So this man, his eyes are closed. He's down. But here's the thing I want to point out, this gesture that he does. It describes he does a gesture. He beats on his chest. We don't use that gesture. I use it a lot with my son sometimes, Donkey Kong style. But we don't use this gesture anymore. But this gesture was a sign of saying, this is my fault. And I am remorsing it. I'm remorsing it. This is my fault. I am sorrowful for what I've done. I'm taking credit for this. This is my fault. So this is the way he's praying. He's saying, God, my life is my fault. My sins are my fault. My condition is my fault. By the way, It's a good way to start a prayer. Amen. Don't try to blame God for, well, God, I wouldn't have cheated if you hadn't brought that woman around. No, it's not how that works. So he's taking full credit and he's sorrowful about his sin. Let's keep reading. He would not lift up his eyes as much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. So as he's smiting his heart, as he's saying, this is my fault. My life is my fault. My sins are my fault. I'm not blaming him. I'm not blaming all the other publicans who taught me how to cheat people. I'm not blaming my environment. I'm not a victim of my parents. I'm not blaming society as a whole. My choices, my actions, they're on me. Amen. But be merciful. Now, mercy, wonderful word. Not getting what you rightly deserve. Best illustration of that is if you're flying down 24 West here and you're going 90 and you get pulled over and the police officer or the sheriff decides he's going to be very gracious and merciful to you and not give you a ticket, that's mercy. Did you deserve a ticket, a speeding ticket? Yes. In fact, in the snowy conditions, we could actually get you for reckless driving and driving over the speed limit. You deserve the speeding ticket, but if you didn't get it, that's mercy. And all this man is asking, he's not saying, God, I want you to give me what I deserve. He's saying, God, I know what I deserve. I'm asking that you don't give me what I deserve. Amen. Because I am a sinner. Amen. By the way, that's step one to getting saved. Step one is saying, I know I'm wrong. I acknowledge I'm a sinner. By the way, if you really struggle with that, come talk to me. I'll point some things out real quick. Just kidding. From my own life. I'll say, I did this, this, and this. You might go, I've done something like that before. Ha! Gotcha. You're a sinner too. Verse 14, Jesus says, I tell you, this man, this publican, went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. Jesus said this sinner that knew he was a sinner, that asked for mercy, understanding it was his fault, he was justified. And the best way to give the best definition of justified is this: just as if I'd never sinned. Just as if I'd never, whatever. Sinned is the way to fill it in for this particular. That's the best definition of justified. So this man left that place, left that. Did everyone know that he prayed this kind of prayer? No, probably nobody heard him because he stood afar off. Because he didn't lift his head. He didn't make a show of it. But he left there saved. Rather than the other. Lets us know that Pharisee, he didn't leave there any different. No, he prayed too. He prayed to the same God. But he didn't get anything out of it. Oh, but he lived a much better life. Oh yeah, but he was still a sinner. Oh, his life, if you put them side by side, you go, publican is a thief, he's a cheat, he's a liar. Pharisee, he tithes, he fasts, he dresses right, he follows the law. But it really doesn't matter all that. The bottom line is they're still sinful. The Pharisee did the things that he did because he was sinful. The Pharisees despised others because they were sinful. And Jesus said the result of that was hell. Then Jesus gives the reason. For everyone that exalteth himself shall be abased. Abase just means simply put low. In fact, that was my title. I didn't give it to you. Pride, abases. What was my title? I got like 16 pages now of notes to look at. Pride will abase. There it is. Pride will abase was the title. Jesus says everyone who tries to lift himself up, Jesus will put down. And anyone who is humble shall be lifted up. Doesn't that make sense for God? I mean, that just makes sense to me for God. God that created us, do you think he wants us to say, God, check me out, I'm all that in a bag of chips? Or God, you knew when I fell. You were there in the garden. You knew when Adam fell. You knew that sin passed down. You knew that we were all going to make mistakes. And so because you knew we were all going to be sinners, you sent your son to die on the cross for our sins. I'm a sinner, and all I'm asking for is mercy. Which one do you think would get a better result from God if you're just thinking logically? Probably the one where the person's saying, God, I need you, not the person that's saying, look at me, what I've done. That's why I deserve to be up there with you. With Jesus, the way up is down. A few points of application, we'll be done. Here we go. 3 things, real quick. 3 things, maybe not real quick, we'll see. I shouldn't lie from the pulpit. I genuinely mean to be quick. Number 1, which are you in the area of ministry? Do you enumerate the things you do for God and think that you are special or somehow better than others just because of whatever position God has allowed you to or ministry God has allowed you to do? I can promise you this, if you're humble about the ministry that God's allowed you to have, God gives you more, God blesses you more. If you're prideful about them, you're not going to hold that position very long, probably, because God's very clear that he'll go ahead and put you down. Number 2, so that one's fast. This one's a little slower. Which one are you with your relationships? Now, I know relationships were never brought up here. You say, what do you mean by relationships? Parenting, children, marriage, co-workers. There's some application here. Let's use marriage, because that's an easy one. My wife and I sometimes have disagreements. Very, very rarely. Mainly because I'm always right. God just strikes me down as I'm preaching. You're like, oh, I guess I got to find a new pastor. Anyways, but we have disagreements in our marriage. That's normal, by the way. You're going to, because you're still 2 people. If you get this idea that marriage means that we're never going to fight, you're dumb. You're going to have some disagreements. Now, we try to fight on low volume away from our kids, and, we try to do it right. And but here's the thing. Most of our arguments will stem from most likely me, but one of us being prideful, unwilling to say, this is my fault. I'm sorry. My bad. This is on me. Well, I wouldn't have done that had you not said this. That's not how it goes, but I'm trying to illustrate, not me and my wife now. Let's pretend another marriage, because I want you to think this is how we fight. Well, I wouldn't have spent the money had you told me it wasn't there in the account. I wouldn't have done that. It's your fault. This is all because... all it takes for a fight to end pretty quickly is typically one person coming in, and not in pride, but in humility, going, hey, this is on me. I'm sorry. This is my fault. No, I know you had your mistakes, but it came from me. By the way, men, that needs to be you most of the time. Say, why? Because you're the leader. Dude. If you want to be the leader, then learn how to humble yourself. Anything that's wrong in your home, if you're a man, it's your fault. Well, my kids, they just don't behave like I want my kids to behave. That's your fault. What do you mean it's my fault? I'm at work all day. It's your fault because you're dad. That's why. You either didn't teach him to respect your wife, probably because you don't respect her, or you didn't teach him discipline. Somewhere you're failing. And all she can do is do her best to pick up pieces of your failure. But in marriage, if you're humble and you come and say, hey, this is all my fault, those fights usually end pretty quick. It's hard to want to come back with one of them haymaker gotcha moments whenever the other person just says, hey, this is all my fault. Well, Pastor, you understand, I'm always the one that has to come in and give the humble response. Are you bragging about your humility right now? Just saying. But that area, if you're a parent, you're not a perfect parent. I'm not a perfect parent. It's all right to admit to your kids you've made some mistakes. You've messed up a few times. At work, it's all right to be humble about it. Don't try to blame someone else. Take responsibility and apologize. Number 3, last one. I know we're over time, I think. It don't matter. Which are you in the area of salvation? Whoever trusts in himself is kidding himself. I don't know every person's heart in here. I don't know every person's testimony in here. I don't know where you stand. I don't know if you thought you were saved, or maybe think you're saved, or maybe know you're not saved, or maybe you're relying on yourself. Maybe you just think, I just want whatever God gives me when I die. Well, I'm just going to let you know, we're all sinners. That's right. You don't believe me? Come hang around my 2-year-old. He'll prove from birth we're sinners. Say, well, yeah, I may have been a sinner when I was a kid. I may have stole something when I was a kid. I may have did something when I was a kid. But since I've been an adult, I've done my very best. Okay, well, what about all the past sins? Guy robs a bank, gives the money back. He's still in trouble. The judge doesn't go, well, you gave all the money back, so we're just going to let you go. You still stole in the past. We got to do something about that. Well, I promise I'll never steal again. I'll never rob another bank again. Yeah, we know, but you did it already. Something's got to be done. Your past sins have to be answered for. Your past failures have to be accounted for. And you think, well, I'm doing something to balance them out. You can't just cover those up. The only thing that covers those sins up is the blood of Jesus Christ. So who are you trusting in? Are you self-righteous, saying, I'll get myself to heaven? I'll go through the baptismal waters. To be honest with you, that's just a warm bath with me. In fact, if it's like when Parker and Rayleigh got baptized, it's a cold bath with me because the heater broke. It does nothing for you. It's not washing anything off. In fact, you might stink worse coming out of it, depending on how hard I wanted to clean that huge baptistry. It does nothing for you. If you're thinking in your mind, well, I remember as a kid, I remember I got baptized. Yeah, but do you remember when you got saved? Yeah. When you trusted in Jesus Christ, when you said, it's not about me, it's about Him, it's not what I can do, I just want mercy. Because I know that sounds crazy, but there's people that get saved later in life that you find out they were holding on to, they could remember the baptism. They didn't really remember the events that led up to the baptism, but they remember the baptism, and that's what they were holding on to, and they realized, I never actually did trust Jesus Christ, my personal Savior. I don't ever remember that time. If you don't remember that time, it probably didn't happen. I only got married one time. It was only one day, but I remember it happened. I remember the day. It's kind of a big deal. And I promise, when your eternity is changed from hell to heaven, you'll remember. I can describe to you the feelings I had. Not just where I was, the time, the place. I'm talking the feelings I had. I can't even remember the feelings of my wedding. Don't look at me like that. That was dang near 10 years ago. I've slept since then. But I can tell you the feelings when I got saved. And if you don't have that kind of testimony, who are you relying on? Who are you trusting in? Are you more like this Pharisee or this publican? And I don't mean in your life, because I'm hoping you're more like the Pharisee in your lifestyle, at least in the sense that they did what they were supposed to be doing. I mean in who you're going to trust in. Because the Pharisee said, I know I'm right because I tithe and I fast twice a week. And the publican said, I'm sorrowful because I'm a sinner. I've messed up. I'm wrong and it's my fault. Jesus, I need God. I need mercy. I am a sinner. Which one are you today? Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for this